Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our English learning journey. Today, we are going to learn English through a simple and enjoyable story called A Day at the Park. This story is perfect for English learners who want to improve their listening, vocabulary, pronunciation, and speaking skills. In this story, we will follow a person who visits a beautiful park, enjoys nature, meets a friend, and practices English along the way. As you listen, pay attention to the simple sentences and useful everyday expressions. You will learn English words related to nature, walking, exercise, friends, daily activities, and conversations. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. Listen carefully and try to understand the meaning from the story. You can pause the video, repeat the sentences aloud, and practice the new words later. Remember, you don't need perfect English to start speaking. Just need regular practice, patience, and confidence. So sit comfortably, listen carefully, and enjoy this beautiful story. Let's learn English together, one story at a time. Now, let's begin A Day at the Park. It was a beautiful Sunday morning. The sun was shining brightly. The sky was clear and blue. A cool breeze was blowing. The birds were singing in the trees. I woke up early that morning. I looked outside my window. The weather looked perfect. I decided to visit the park. I wanted to enjoy some fresh air. I also wanted to practice my English. I got out of bed. I made my bed. Then I brushed my teeth. I washed my face. I took a quick shower. I put on comfortable clothes. I wore my walking shoes. I took my water bottle. I also took my notebook. I put my phone in my pocket. Then I went downstairs. My mother was in the kitchen. I said, "Good morning, Mom." She smiled and said, "Good morning." She asked, "Where are you going?" I said, "I am going to the park." She asked, "Are you going alone?" I said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Okay, enjoy yourself." I thanked her. I had a light breakfast. Then I filled my water bottle. I checked my phone. I was ready to leave. I opened the front door. The morning air felt fresh. I closed the door behind me. Then I started walking. The park was not far from my home. I walked along a quiet street. The road was clean. A few people were walking. Some people were riding bicycles. I saw a small shop. The shop was just opening. I greeted the shopkeeper. He smiled at me. I continued walking. Soon, I could see the park entrance. There was a large green gate. A sign stood near the gate. It said, "Welcome to Green Park." I smiled when I saw it. I entered the park. The park was beautiful. There were many tall trees. There were colorful flowers. There were green plants everywhere. The grass looked fresh. The paths were clean. People were enjoying the morning. Some people were walking. Some people were running. Some people were sitting on benches. Children were playing nearby. I walked slowly. I wanted to enjoy the peaceful atmosphere. I took a deep breath. The air smelled fresh. I could hear birds singing. I could hear children laughing. I could hear people talking. Everything felt peaceful. I found an empty bench. I sat down. I looked around. A large tree stood in front of me. Its branches were moving gently. Small birds were sitting on the branches. I took out my phone. I took a picture of the tree. Then I put my phone away. I wanted to enjoy the moment. After a few minutes, I stood up. I started walking again. I saw a group of children. They were playing football. They were laughing loudly. One boy kicked the ball. The ball rolled toward me. I stopped the ball with my foot. One of the boys ran toward me. He said, "Sorry." I smiled and gave him the ball. He said, "Thank you." I said, "You're welcome." He ran back to his friends. I continued walking. I noticed a beautiful flower garden. There were many flowers. Some flowers were red. Some flowers were yellow. Some flowers were white. Some flowers were purple. Butterflies were flying around them. I stood there for a while. I enjoyed the beautiful view. I took a few pictures. Then I continued my walk. I saw an elderly man sitting on a bench. He was reading a newspaper. I greeted him politely. He smiled and greeted me. He asked, "Do you come here often?" I said, "No, this is my first visit this month." He smiled. He said, "This is a wonderful place." I agreed with him. I said, "Yes, it is very peaceful." He closed his newspaper. He asked, "Do you like walking?" I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Walking is good for the body and mind." I said, "I agree." We talked for a few minutes. Then I thanked him. I continued walking. I reached a small pond. The pond looked beautiful. The water was calm. A few ducks were swimming. Some children were watching the ducks. I stood near the pond. I watched the ducks. One duck moved toward the edge. Another duck followed it. I smiled. Nature was beautiful. I took another picture. Then I walked along the pond. There were benches beside the water. Some people were sitting there. A young couple was talking quietly. A family was having a small picnic. Children were eating snacks. Everyone looked happy. I continued walking. I noticed a small playground. It was full of children. There were swings. There was a slide. There were climbing frames. Children were playing happily. Some parents were watching them. I remembered my childhood. I smiled at the memory. I walked toward another part of the park. I saw a man exercising. He was stretching his arms. Another person was doing simple exercises. Some people were jogging. I decided to walk faster. I wanted to exercise too. I started walking quickly. The path was smooth. The trees provided some shade. The weather was comfortable. I felt energetic. I walked for several minutes. Then I slowed down. I drank some water. I sat on another bench. I looked at my notebook. I decided to practice English. I wrote, "I am at the park." Then I wrote, "The weather is beautiful." I wrote, "The birds are singing." I wrote, "Children are playing." I wrote, "People are walking." I wrote, "The flowers are colorful." I read the sentences aloud. I tried to speak clearly. I repeated each sentence. I realized that the park was a perfect place to practice English. I could describe everything around me. I could learn new words. I could make simple sentences. I could practice speaking naturally. I decided to learn 5 new words. The first word was bench. A bench is a place where people can sit. The second word was path. A path is a way for people to walk. The third word was pond. A pond is a small area of water. The fourth word was flower. A flower is the colorful part of a plant. The fifth word was shade. Shade is a cooler place away from direct sunlight. I repeated the 5 words. Then I made sentences with them. I said, I am sitting on a bench. I said, I am walking on a path. I said, there is a pond in the park. I said, the flowers are beautiful. I said, I am sitting in the shade. I felt happy with my practice. Suddenly, I heard someone calling my name. I looked behind me. It was my friend Alex. I was surprised to see him. Alex walked toward me. He said, hello. I said, hello, Alex. He asked, what are you doing here? I said, I came here for a walk. He said, that's great. I asked, did you come alone? He said, yes, I wanted some fresh air. We laughed. Alex sat beside me. We started talking. He asked, how long have you been here? I said, about an hour. He looked around. He said, this park is really beautiful. I agreed. I said, I love the peaceful atmosphere. Alex asked, do you want to walk together? I said, of course. We stood up. We started walking together. We talked about our plans. Alex told me about his week. I told him about mine. We talked about school. We talked about our hobbies. We talked about our favorite books. We also talked about learning English. Alex asked, how do you practice speaking? I said, I speak English every day. I told him about my notebook. I showed him the new words. Alex liked the idea. He said, I should do that too. I said, you can start today. We continued walking. We reached the pond again. We watched the ducks together. Alex took a picture. Then we walked toward the flower garden. The flowers looked even more beautiful in the sunlight. Alex said, look at those butterflies. I looked carefully. There were several butterflies. They were flying from flower to flower. We watched them quietly. After a while, we continued walking. We found a quiet place under a large tree. We sat on the grass. The shade was cool. A gentle breeze was blowing. We felt relaxed. Alex said, I could stay here all day. I laughed. I said, me too. We talked about our dreams. Alex wanted to travel. I also wanted to travel. We talked about different places. We imagined visiting beautiful cities. We imagined seeing mountains. We imagined walking beside the sea. We imagined trying new food. We imagined meeting new people. Alex said, traveling teaches us many things. I agreed. I said, yes, and it can help us learn English too. We smiled. The sun was getting higher. It was almost noon. We decided to go home. Before leaving, we walked around the park one more time. We passed the playground. We passed the pond. We passed the flower garden. We passed the large trees. We passed the benches. We reached the entrance. I looked back at the park. I felt happy. I had spent a wonderful morning. I had enjoyed nature. I had exercised. I had practiced English. I had met my friend. I had learned new words. Alex said, "See you tomorrow." I said, "See you." We said goodbye. I started walking home. The streets were busier now. I walked slowly. I thought about my morning. I realized that I did not need a classroom to practice English. I could practice English anywhere. I could practice in the park. I could practice at home. I could practice while walking. I could practice with friends. I could practice by describing what I saw. I could learn from everyday life. When I reached home, my mother asked, "How was your morning?" I smiled and said, "It was wonderful." She asked, "Did you enjoy the park?" I said, "Yes, very much." I told her about the flowers. I told her about the pond. I told her about the ducks. I told her about Alex. I told her about my English practice. She was happy to hear my story. I went to my room. I opened my notebook. I wrote about my morning. I wrote, "Today I visited the park. The weather was beautiful. I saw many flowers. I watched the ducks. I met my friend Alex. We practiced English together. I learned 5 new words. I enjoyed the peaceful morning. I read everything aloud. I felt proud of myself. I realized that small daily practice could make a big difference. I did not need to study difficult sentences all the time. Simple sentences were useful too. I could talk about things I saw every day. I could describe my surroundings. I could ask simple questions. I could answer simple questions. Slowly, my confidence was growing. That day at the park taught me an important lesson. Learning English can be simple. Learning English can be enjoyable. Learning English can happen anywhere. We only need to practice regularly. We need to listen carefully. We need to speak without being afraid of mistakes. We need to learn useful words. We need to use those words in sentences. We need to keep trying. Every small effort matters. Every new word matters. Every sentence matters. Every conversation matters. Every practice session makes us better. I looked at my notebook again. I smiled. I thought about the peaceful park. I remembered the birds. I remembered the flowers. I remembered the pond. I remembered the children playing. I remembered talking with Alex. It had been a simple morning, but it had been a meaningful morning. I had learned something new. I had enjoyed nature. I had spent time with a friend. I had improved my English. I had become a little more confident. I decided to visit the park again. Next time, I would learn more words. I would speak more English. I would describe more things. I would invite more friends. I would continue learning. I understood that progress takes time. Nobody becomes fluent in one day. Nobody learns every word at once. But everyone can improve with practice. One sentence today can become 10 sentences tomorrow. One new word today can become many useful words later. One small conversation can build confidence. I was ready to continue my English journey. I closed my notebook. I put it on my desk. I looked outside the window. The sun was still shining. I smiled and remembered my beautiful morning. I said, I will keep practicing. I said, I will keep learning. I said, I will keep speaking. I knew that every day was a new opportunity. Every place could become a classroom. Every experience could become a story. And every story could help me learn English.